Guys, Reglues suck. I get it. Trust me, I've been there. They're a huge headache. I would always wait to do them last and I'd end up with a bunch of Reglues to finish just because I hated doing them and I never knew the right way to do them. However, today we're going to take all the pieces, put it together, and make it one easy puzzle for you guys to solve. You're going to have Reglues being one of the easiest things you do by the end of this video. Damn. So some shoes of this age, I always recommend, instead of just doing a touch-up, say this was just hanging off like this and they're like, hey, I just need the front of this glued. I'll just break down the whole entire shoe and redo it if it's more than 6 or 7 years old, because most of that glue is dried up and it needs to be replaced anyway. We just really want to make sure everything's uniform and so you don't have to end up paying for it twice. If we do reglue the front and the back comes undone, you got to send it back in to do the back. We might as well just do it all at once and make sure it's durable, wearable, and ready to go. You can see that this one was actually already taken apart. I actually did this in front of the client. We met locally here, and I was like, yo, I'm about to break your heart and hurt your feelings, but this has got to happen. I actually didn't take the whole entire sole off, but I can pretty much just sit here as dry as a bone. See if we can get all that off here. Yeah. So the interesting part on this other shoe is that they actually use crazy glue, and it actually came up above the line. You can see where that raw natural leather ends, and then there's actually a glue line above it. This one might be a little more difficult to pull apart by hand, but I'm going to go ahead and try now just to see if I can get the rest. And this is a really good tip for anyone that's inquiring or wants to get their shoes done or is thinking, I just need a reglue. Like in this right here, I think at first he was like, I just need to touch up here, here, and on the side. But really what you should do, a shoe of this age, the glue is probably dried out just like that. So what I like to do is just pull back on an area that's separated, like right here, and just start running my finger pretty much along these edges and just start pulling back. And usually, yep, see how that just split? And just roll the rest of the shoe out. Up here on the front, I may not be able to get all of it, and I might need to grab some acetone just because I don't want to damage the leather or the midsole because he did use that crazy glue. I don't want to try and pull that because that bond is a little more permanent, but you should not be using crazy glue on shoes because it's not going to wear very well, and it's just not suited for shoes, to be honest. So I'll just go ahead and try and pull off the rest of the upper here and work my way around. Again, just take your finger. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Some people are like, bro, I only need a touch up. I'm like, I've been doing this too long, trust me. Today, all you're really going to need is some Q-tips, some cotton balls, some acetone, some glue, some gloves if you want, and then definitely a respirator mask if you're using the right glue because it's very, very toxic. It's not good stuff. It's great for shoes, but to inhale that for a long period of time that we're going to be working on these, you definitely want to cut those out. So usually when it's this dried out, normally the rest of this glue is pretty dried out, even though it seems pretty secure. So I just like to use a little cheap brush that's got a little angled slope on there just to kind of dig underneath and see if we can't get that to pop up. Yep. See how that just kind of cracks up for me? All that glue is just as dry as the rest of the upper. And surprisingly, this air unit's fully intact. There's no leaks. It feels really full. It's really responsive. So we can go ahead and save this and reuse it, which is nice. So the first thing I'm going to do is just go ahead and pop these gloves on just to be safe. And we'll just go ahead and take some regular acetone. The brand doesn't matter. I just get whatever's on sale. And take our cotton balls. And I just try and separate what I can and just work that cotton ball into those gaps. There we go. And then just kind of push along that gap. And the acetone's going to do a lot of the work for you. And the rest we can probably just pull off here. Boom. So now for this next part, this is where it gets a little bit messy. We need to remove all the old glue from all of these parts. So for this, we're definitely going to need way more cotton balls. So I got a whole bag right here. I'm going to go ahead and time lapse me just cleaning all this off, but just using the acetone to get off that old glue as much as possible. So there really is no trick to this. I'm just taking acetone and wiping all over. You can see I'm going up on the foam midsole, and that's going to get off a lot of dirt, so that's a little tip there. But feel free to be pretty liberal and make sure you get all of that glue off, as that's very important. So now you can see a comparison. On the left it looks much more yellow. You'll easily be able to tell if you got all the glue off, but this is just a clean shot side by side what it should look like after. I then went ahead and did the same exact process that I just did on the foam midsoles on the soles. You can see the left is before and the right is after, except that right shoe you can see up on the front we got that crazy glue. So on the next part, I'm going to take the Dremel and get off some of this crazy glue that he got here on the edge as well as on the front toe cap. I'm not sure what the grit is on this. It's just one from Walmart that comes with it. Anything will really do. Just don't want to press too hard. And you can use sandpaper or just rub at this for a long time with acetone. This helps a lot, and I actually use this later on the upper that I'll show you, and it's a really handy tool that's only about 30 bucks.
So while doing this, I'm not really focusing on anything besides not applying too much pressure, as you can tear off some of that rubber since it is a strong tool, so just be careful and kind of graze at it.
Alright, so once we get done with dremeling on that front, we're going to go ahead and use some acetone again. Even though we already prepped this, this is just to kind of clean up any of this debris and dust that's in there from the rubber and the crazy glue that kind of shaved off.
Right here, just go ahead and use acetone liberally to get up all that dust and any excess glue that may have came off with the Dremel. And right here is just an overview of how clean that does look, and we'll go ahead and hop over and start prepping the uppers. Alright, so now that most of the pieces are prepped, we're going to go ahead and start working on the upper here, and make sure you keep that Dremel handy that you just hacked, so we're going to use it again on here. So in this case with the crazy glue, this is a really good method, but this also works for a lot of other shoes and just regular factory glue. I go ahead and take the X-Acto knife here and just cut along that raw leather. That's basically the seam and the line that you're going to want to match with your glue for your reglue to make it flush. I'm just making incisions along the side and being careful of the stitching anywhere. On this shoe it's right where I just showed, but on other shoes you can obviously see the stitching, so just be careful around that. But I just make the incision along that line pretty deep, but you don't want to cut through the shoe, so it's a delicate balance. And then I literally just kind of start scraping at it. And this is really going to flake off, you'll see on these next few clips, because there is crazy glue. Again, this does apply to regular factory glue, or especially if someone else has done a reglue on here. I'll show you something in just a second here that helps remove that, but you can really see this kind of flaking off. You're going to want to get off as much of this as possible. This is a really good method. You can just use acetone, but we will use acetone at the end just to clean it up. But I kind of like to do the full trifecta to get the best prep that we can. And in this case I use Midsole Magic because there is crazy glue, and I'll just go ahead and apply that with just a Q-tip here, and just like you would on the midsole, just apply it all over. It's not going to damage the leather. There's a suede or nubuck, be careful and tape that up, and then just take your X-Acto knife here and just start basically wiping that away. It's going to work the same way it does on the paint. It might be a little more stubborn in those crazy glue areas, but I try to get most off just by scraping it, and then this is cleaning up any excess remnants that's left behind to read this. Basically with the raw leather is what we want for a really good attachment. And I'll just continue scraping here, trying to watch that stitching on the edges and just try and get as much as I possibly can, and then just wipe it off with a towel when you're done to get any excess off. Here's a little close-up to show you the raw leather and what it should look like and what you're going for. So we got the majority of the glue off, but there's still some left on there, so we're going to go ahead and use the Dremel again and just run along this edge. Again, watch out for that stitching, be careful, and try and get as close as possible to that edge without actually hitting the upper and damaging that. And again, here toward the end, I just basically go over it once more just to make sure I get as much as possible. You can kind of see the glue that's on there, and I'm just working in those darker areas to try and remove that. And I'll just continue doing this around the whole entire upper, especially on the areas where that raw leather should be exposed for a good attachment. The next part, we're going to use the Barge Super Stick. You can use Barge Infinity for most reglues. However, for this process, the directions are a little bit different. And the way I use this specifically, I've only done it with Barge Super Stick. So you probably could use Barge Infinity without problem. I just don't want to be the root of those problems if you do have them, so take my caution. So we're basically going to work our way inside out. We're going to start with the air unit and apply that into the forefoot of the midsole and work our way out. Now that everything's prepped, if you guys want to come in a little bit closer, I'll show you the next step. So I keep my glue in this glue pot just so it doesn't dry out, because Barge does have a tendency to dry out. So this is not the groundbreaking part. For this part we're going to do pretty much what you would imagine is a traditional reglue. And my glue is getting a little dried out, but this is still fine. So just applying a thin coat here. This one isn't too detailed or much information here, because you're really just getting some coverage. And this is not a spot that's going to have a lot of stress. You're really just going to be putting the weight of your foot down on it. So just one thin coat is good here. Do the underside here. Just want to make sure you're doing it right. Trust me, I've done it backwards before and it won't fit in the other shoe the same way, so make sure you keep them together with the same shoe. So it's been about 8 minutes and this is dry. This is going to get a little bit messy again because I accidentally did get glue up here on the top portion. But we're going to go ahead and lay this in. It's pretty easy since it's so detailed and you can see all the detailing where it really needs to sit. But I like to spread the sides out.
That's what she said!
So this little lip opens up and I can just kind of slip it in there and close it, because it does come over the edge a little bit.
So just laying that in here, again, just kind of spreading those sides out a little bit and then applying pressure down. Again, this isn't a super stressful area, so you should be alright with just some decent pressure to get that set in. And then I use my hand just to once more over.
Alright guys, so the next part is crucial.
I'm just kidding, I'll do a voiceover.
So I just cover the bottom outside, and I actually wait to do the sides. I slow it down a little bit because it's a little bit different. I just want to give you guys some more in-depth information on that part. And then I'll go ahead and just cover this whole entire outsole, or the outside of the midsole I should say, on the bottom. Then I'll switch over to the outsole here. And one little trick, if you can kind of see me doing it in fast motion, I use the brush to kind of go up the lip. So I kind of start on the back here and literally just use the bristles to come up off that edge so I don't get any glue on the outside. If you do, just clean it up with your finger or a Q-tip or something like that. It's really not a big deal, but just getting a medium coat all over, just one coat's good. And then here on the outsole, or the outside I should say, of the midsole, I keep saying that, I just let the brush do the work, and that curve lets you know where you need to go. If you get a little bit of glue up on the upper, I point some out here I believe, I just go ahead and remove that. You can use acetone or a Q-tip or clean it up right away, but it's not a huge deal because it's on white. But if you're doing nubuck or suede, you got to be a little bit more careful during this part.
So it's been about 6 to 8 minutes, I would say, since I put the glue on and let it dry. You can feel it still feels kind of cold to the touch, but it's not sticking to my hand. It feels a little tacky almost is the best way to say it. And I'm sure if I touch these, they'll probably grab. But I'm actually going to go ahead and use the heat gun for this part and just heat these up lightly. Now this part's kind of tricky because you only really have one shot, so you want to try and lightly apply it. You can do some small adjustments here and there, but pretty much once it touches, it's going to grab and it's good to go. So I'll basically start back on the heel and just line up this edge to make sure we're good there. And then this little corner right here, you can see where this meets. This is a really good guide to try and fit that down into one of those corners. I'm actually doing this on the side away from the camera. So I find that corner and press down on that edge, and then we'll come around here and pull this up to find that edge as well. Okay, and some of this I might need to pull away from the camera a little bit so you can see right here this is grabbing because I touched it. You need to watch out for that. And I'll just work on the sides and fitting that to the shape of the midsole and just pressing upward and in when I do have that spot roughly.
A lot of these next parts are just going to be rinse and repeat of what I was just doing. Removing, make sure it's in the right place, applying pressure, make sure we get a good fit.
Just get that inward pressure to make sure you're getting both sides adhered, basically pressing up into the corner here and down on the opposite end. Without even touching this side, you can see that lined up pretty well because we did a good job of fitting it here and we kept the bottom flat. Make sure you work out any bubbles and press across, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Just once more doing a once over with the heat gun just to make sure that glue is fully cured and add a little bit more pressure to secure everything. You can heat this up too much and start misshaping the foam, so be careful about that, but as long as you're pretty careful with it and it's not getting too hot and you're not misshaping it, you can feel free to keep heating it up. And then I use a little tool like the edge of this toothbrush or whatever you have handy just to get some good pressure in those hard to reach areas.
So now as we shift the focus to the upper and the inside, we're going to go ahead and put some glue down on both of these and let these dry again for about 2 hours, I would say is safe. This one's pretty easy just because it's so discolored on the upper. I can actually see where this line does go and use this as a guide. Every shoe will have a guide roughly to see where the old glue went, or you can just create a line if you'd like, or even trace it with this on here if that's helpful to you. I'm just going to apply glue to the bottom, the inside, as well as the sides here.
Jesus.
Alright y'all, you're probably wondering why you're at this angle, why you're so close to my face, and why my hair looks terrible because I was wearing this mask as if it looks good ever. But that's because I want to get serious with you. This is the part that no one's talking about, no one's showing you. Maybe some people aren't doing it. Just the best, easiest method I have found to get a really good attachment where it should be and make sure it's secure, not having any gaps, not having any offsets or anything that looks weird or out of place. This is what counts. So if you aren't paying attention, right here, pay attention. So these are fully dried. I let these cure for about 2 hours or so. That should be good. Anything after 2 hours, if it goes longer, that's fine. It's not a big deal. It's not going to hurt it, but you definitely want to wait 2 hours. While I have you here, I'm going to change the camera angle just to give you guys a better view because this is pretty detailed and this is where that straight line comes in and making your reglues look factory like they were never actually reglued. What you're basically going to do is you're going to take a heat gun. You're going to heat individual areas, and I start with the sides because that's the part that really needs to line up, and then you can focus on the bottom. But for instance, what I'll be doing in the next clip that you're going to see, again I'll change the view so you can see it better, is I'm going to start right here up on the front where this corner meets and this rubber starts to come up. So basically this corner I know goes about right here, and you can use this as a guide to see where things fit. So I'm going to heat up this area here, try not to heat up the bottom or any other areas, and heat up the corresponding area on the counterparts of the midsole and the outsole. And then I'm going to go apply pressure and make sure I get a good grip. I'm not trying to get any connections back here, underneath, or in other areas, literally just working in small sections until we've worked our way all the way around the shoe.
And heat that down. I usually work on the toe cap last, but you can kind of hop around as you see fit, and I literally just continue, like I said, all the way around the shoe. So I'll do a little time lapse here, but again, just making sure it's lined up correctly, then adding heat. That's the big key, is make sure it's lined up, then adding heat, and then compressing. Sometimes it won't stick as well, or you won't get a perfect fitment, but just, you know, take your time, line that up, apply heat into those gaps, and make sure you get down into that corner, that edge where it slopes up and meets the actual sole, and where it starts coming up on the side of the upper. It's a really tough part. And here on the toe cap, I'm just applying a downward pressure on my desk with my hand in it, and then kind of sealing the little gaps with my finger to make sure that it is secure and a nice flush fit. And you'll see here on the back there's that gap. I don't show this in the video. I realize I didn't film it or get a good shot of it. I can't remember. If you can imagine just stepping on your heel and putting pressure down like that, just do that with your hands. Or if you can fit the shoe, put the shoe on and do that. I mean, put on some clean socks if it's not your shoe, because that's kind of gross. But you can just use your hands to close that gap, and it will sit right into that cup, because the way you walk and it flex, that's a natural curve and a natural movement of that area.
And there it is, guys. I'm hoping that makes things a lot easier for you, because when I learned it, it made things so much easier for me. So all I ask of you, if you like, comment, subscribe, and share. Actually, nah, don't share it because you want to keep this your own secret. So if you could just like, comment, and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. Help me out. And I won't be doing a stress test just because I finished these up and I wanted to wrap up the video and give the overview of them. So I painted the uppers, and you can see the comparison here. If you guys do want to see another video or more information, you can follow me on my Instagram, which is just @RaleighRestorations. All that will be down in the description, as long as some other cool stuff for you guys. If you want to check that out, get some more behind the scenes. And I do post a lot of videos and tips and tricks that just really aren't video worthy, or it's literally a minute long. I'm not going to upload a minute long YouTube because I'm famous for the hour-long Red October videos, so I got to make these kind of long, but I try to condense this as much as possible, get the information to you guys. So again, if you did find this helpful, I'd really appreciate it. Comment, like, and subscribe. So if you guys do want to catch a stress test, I promise I'll do it here on the back a little bit, just because they're not fully secure or fully dry, but these things are ready to go, made to wear. I just let them cure for 24 hours before I do a real stress test before giving them back to the client, but I will be posting a story or maybe even a post on Instagram where you can check those out. So if you follow me there, I'd really appreciate it. Keep in the loop if you guys want some more tips and tricks just to keep up with me. But till next time, take it easy, guys.
Incredible, incredible. The truth back. Let's get to business. It's something unfamiliar. Call it a foreign image. Paint heavily leaking. I guess it wasn't finished. Riding with some freaky. They tell me she the business.